Just before we begin, I'm going to remind you that we are not professional legal tax or investment advisors. We are only providing general education. What we cover in this presentation may or may not specifically apply to your situation. And we're not sponsored or affiliated with any of the third parties that we mention. Any third party recommendation is made based solely off our own experience with them, and we cannot ensure the accuracy of websites, products, or services offered through those resources.
So in today's presentation, we're going to be going over why we budget, determining the source of income and cash flows, defining and quantifying financial goals, prioritizing your expenses, tips and best practices for budgeting, and then you're going to create your own budget. So why do we budget? Well, it's the very first step you can take in the process of managing your money. It always allows you to control your spending and ensures that you have enough money for the things you need. It also allows you to reach your goals faster because you have a better understanding of where all your money is going. And of course, it also ensures that you don't spend money you don't have. Budgeting is not something to fear. It'll give you a sense of confidence in your spending habits and can be a fun way to make sure you don't overspend your money, and it's nothing you have to do forced every month. So can anyone in the audience tell me where your money is coming from that you would budget? You have to either unmute yourself or talk in the chat or respond. So for instance, during the summertime, my income is coming from my sailing club job. So that would be my source of income, and then budgeting it throughout the school year.
People in the chat saying money from co-op, savings from work, parents, internships.
Perfect. Yeah, those are all really great examples. So types of income you have can be broken into two types: regular and irregular income. Regular income is your fixed earnings, such as salary or allowance, that you are going to receive on a regular and recurring basis. Irregular income is any occasional earnings that you most likely cannot account for in your bills. This includes things such as birthday gifts, contest prizes, lottery wins, or even scholarships. Regular income is taxable, unlike irregular income.
So how much of your income do you actually get to keep? Your income is taxed in three main ways. The first is the federal income tax. Federal income tax is levied against your annual taxable income, which includes your wages and capital gains from investments. The percent deducted from your income is based on a progressive marginal income tax model. This means that higher earners are taxed more, but only on their marginal income. I'll explain a little more about what that means in a few slides. You must pay federal taxes as a U.S. citizen, regardless of where the money was earned. This means that even if your income was earned overseas, you still must pay federal taxes. This is important to keep in mind if you consider doing an international co-op or working overseas after you graduate. There's also a state income tax. In Massachusetts, this is a flat tax, meaning that the same percentage is applied to your total income no matter how much money you make. You may be subjected to more than one state tax if the income was earned in multiple states. For example, I live in New Jersey. In the northern New Jersey, a lot of people work in New York City, and therefore they're subjugated to both New York City income tax, New York State income tax, and then they also pay New Jersey tax for being a resident. If this is the case, you may be able to deduct one state's income tax from the amount owed to another, but this is different state to state and beyond the scope of what we're going to discuss during this presentation. It just may be handy to remember this when comparing co-ops. Lastly, there's a deduction from your income from FICA, which is the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, which is composed of both Social Security and Medicare. The tax is taken out of your paycheck, and the amount is also matched by your employer. If you are self-employed, you're responsible for both the employee and employer parts of the FICA tax, but you can deduct the employer portion from your gross income. Here's an example of a weekly earnings statement from someone named James Robert, who lived in California in 2014. His weekly gross earnings are shown on the left there. From his weekly income, $14.50 were deducted for Medicare and $62 were deducted for Social Security. Therefore, his total FICA tax this pay period was $76.50. He then had federal and California state income tax deducted from his income. And lastly, he paid state disability insurance tax, which is abbreviated there, SDI. Not every state has this tax. Additionally, if he had earned the income in a city with his own income tax, he would be subject to an additional deduction from that city. At the bottom, you can see his year-to-date gross income. Year-to-date is abbreviated YTD. And YTD gross income is the income earned from the beginning of the year until the current pay date. You can see the current pay date on the upper right. This is before taxes are deducted. Next to that is year-to-date deductions, and then year-to-date net pay. In the right columns, you can see his earned income for the pay period. Next to that are the taxes taken out, this pay period income, and the net pay for this pay period is the last column on the right. This $700.74 figure is what Robert actually takes home this week, not his $1,000 salary. This is an important distinction because you should not budget around your salary, but rather your net pay, since this is what actually you take home and have the ability to spend. So like I previously mentioned, I'm going to talk about the income tax brackets. Here are the 2020 federal income tax brackets. These rates and brackets are subject to change as political power shifts between parties and new tax codes are proposed. And currently both 2020 presidential candidates have promised changes to the federal tax code within the next few years. In the first column, the marginal tax rate is shown. The marginal part of the marginal progressive tax rate means that the tax rate only applies to the next dollar earned, not the total. The next dollar earned phrase is a way of intuitively understanding this. For every next dollar earned above the start of the bracket is subjected to only that tax bracket's rate. The progressive part of the progressive marginal tax rate just means that the rate increases as you enter into higher brackets. If you ever hear the phrase effective tax rate, that is just the total amount paid in taxes as a percent of your salary. For example, someone who makes $80,000 a year pays into 3 brackets. They pay into this 10% bracket here, this 12%, and this 22% bracket. When they calculate their taxes, they would have paid $13,459, which is 16.8% of their total income. Therefore, their effective tax rate is just 16.8%, not the 22% that they fell into as their highest bracket. This is really important to understand. It's important to understand the tax brackets and effective tax rates because I've recently heard a story that someone turned down a pay raise when they realized it would push them into a new tax bracket on the flawed thought that their total income would be taxed at that new rate, and therefore they would take home less money than before the raise. If they understood the tax code, they would realize this isn't true.
So another general question for all of you is, what are some general expenses that you think you might need to budget? Again, either unmute yourself or just talk in the chat. Food, yeah, food. We all have to budget food. Coffee, also very true.
Rent, utilities being put in the chat, gifts, loan payments.
I've never had to budget nails, but I can imagine how that would add up.
Spotify is an important one.
That sneaks up on you too. Thomas, we'll go to the next slide. So fixed expenses. Your biggest and most important expenses are your survival needs. This includes your living expenses, like your rent or your utility bills, your gas money, monthly T-Pass, and of course, food, which are your grocery expenses. This is not included with going out to eat with your friends. Savings. So why do you save? Well, you're saving to accomplish your goals, but you're also saving to ensure that you have enough money left over to pay for all your necessities in case of emergencies. We recommend that you have at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses in your emergency funds. There's also discretionary spending, and this is any money spent on non-essential purchases, such as shopping, dinner, and movies. It represents the amount of income remaining after paying for your necessity bills and putting some of the money away towards your goals. Examples of this include clothing, going out to dinner, and vacations.
All right, so it's time for the bonus question of the night. The bonus question is, what do the percentages of the 50-20-30 rule refer to? You can either just unmute yourself or put it in chat. Anyone? All right, so the 50% refers to the fixed expenses that are need to haves or need to do's, such as rent, groceries, and utilities that Xander just talked about. The 20% should go into savings or debt repayment if you have such obligations. The 30% is discretionary spending, such as eating out, new clothes, sports game tickets, things that are not need to haves, but are rather nice to haves. One thing to realize about this rule is that it applies to your after-tax income, which is that net pay value I talked about before. Also, don't use this rule as a rigid guide, or you may fall into lifestyle inflation, where you increase your spending as your income increases. It may sound obvious, but if you get a 15% pay raise, don't immediately increase all your other spending by 15%. Ideally, you'd want to keep your fixed and discretionary expenses the same and put your extra income into your savings, growing the savings percent and shrinking the fixed and discretionary expenses percents. So just to review, always ask yourself from the moment you're paid, what does this money need to go to before I'm paid again? Start by paying off your fixed expenses, which are your rent, utilities, and food, and then put some money away towards your goals as savings, and then you can have fun with any money left over. It's important to not have the attitude of saving what is left after spending, but rather to have an attitude of spending what is left after saving.
So another question for everybody is, why are your financial goals so important? Again, you can talk in the chat or unmute yourself. I know personally for me, financial goals are important so that if there's a sports event or something that I want to save up my money to and go to with a bunch of my friends, I don't have this burden constantly lingering over me, just waiting to get these payments in on time. Staying motivated, yep, very important. Traveling to Paris, oh, that is a pretty good goal. Yeah. So when managing your money and where you want to allocate it, it's important to identify accountability, direction, and momentum of how you want to spend it. So your goals for when you're budgeting and spending your money can fall into three major categories. The first category is your short-term goals. This falls into the 1 year window, and expenses for this include ski vacations, a new suit or a dress, new jackets, just short-term expenses. The second window is called the medium term, and this would be for something a little bit larger, such as a car, a lease off campus, or maybe even a trip. And then third and finally, your overarching goals are a 4 to 5 year plan, and these are long-term goals. Such things could possibly include buying a house one day, maybe getting married, and buying a wedding.
So to set and reach a goal, you want to clearly define what those goals are so you can set an accurate savings amount. Setting a goal of buying a TV is much vaguer than setting a goal of buying a new 50-inch LG LED TV that retails for $500. You then want to think about a realistic timeline to meet your goal. In this case, 5 months was set for the TV and 24 months was set for the vacation. Knowing the price and timeline, you can determine how much money from each paycheck needs to be saved to meet these goals. Keep records so you keep track of the money you've saved and follow up if your goals aren't met. If you save your money in just one slush fund that is used for various goals with different timelines, it'll be difficult to determine your progress on each individual goal. Like I mentioned previously, to keep track of your progress on each goal and stick to them, you want to keep all your savings in a single account, but have separate accounts for separate goals. Using mobile apps can also help you keep track of each amount. Some helpful tips are to anticipate large spending in the future. For example, around the holiday season, your spending will increase, and you'll want to start anticipating that increased spending sooner rather than later. The next tip is roll with the punches. If something unexpected happens that throws your budget off, be flexible and work around it. You don't want to just shut down and say that you can't budget. You want to be flexible and start getting your budget back on track if an unexpected expense happens. Lastly, treat yourself. Setting a goal of going to a place you've always wanted to go is a pretty common goal for people. The reason we save money is to improve the quality of our lives in the future. So don't be afraid to spend money on a nice trip to reward yourselves for hard work.
So here's some more tips when it comes to budgeting. For one, you can make a grocery list instead of just aimlessly walking into a grocery store and buying everything that you see. I know I've done this many times where I end up walking into a store and then just end up buying everything that's just pretty much eye candy and I don't actually need it, and then end up spending $20, $30 more than I anticipated. And although it might not seem like a lot at the time, compoundingly that adds up and really just messes up your bank account overall. You can also display your goals to make it more realistic and help motivate you to save more. Set limits for discretionary spending so you don't go overboard and spend everything you have. And also set check-ins for your budget to make sure that you're sticking to it, whether it's once a week or once a month. And this is an example of how you can tangibly make a spreadsheet. This is an example of a pivot table in which you would have on the x-axis the interval of time, and on the y-axis you compare your income, what's flowing in, to your expenses, what's flowing out, and just trying to budget it, and then realizing, okay, maybe in January you have more money coming into the account, so you can spend a little bit more, but then in February you might not be making as much money, so you can't spend as much. This is just a really easy way to conceptualize it, so you don't just have all these numbers in your head, and you might forget one or two things every here and there, which again adds up over time.
I mentioned previously that apps are a great way to manage your money. So some resources that we found helpful are mint.com and the Mint app. This is great for visualizing your spending. YNAB.com is useful for goal tracking. YNAB is short for you need a budget. And digit.co automates your savings for you. Some other resources that are available are NerdWallet and lynda.com, and then of course Thrive. So here are some of the things the Mint app can do for you. You can see your spending habits. You can look at your complete financial picture, and you can also see your bank account and investment accounts all in one place. Again, we're not sponsored by Mint. We've just had staff members use it, and we've received positive feedback from those staff members and from people we've recommended it to. We'll take questions now if you have them.
Also, make sure before you guys leave the event, we have a Kahoot game coming up. But before you leave, there's a QR code right there, and I'm gonna put the link right in the chat. If you guys could fill that out, it'd be really great for feedback so that we can make these events tailored to your guys' needs as much as possible.
There's a question in the chat about when someone should start saving for retirement.
The best answer to that question is it's never too early to start saving for retirement, just like any long-term goal, whether it be just a couple dollars every here or there, and you just set it aside and then you put it in some sort of Standard & Poor fund or whatever it may be. That can compound quite a lot amount within 10, 20 years, and just putting $5 aside a month really adds up over a lifetime. So honestly, there should never be too early of a time to start saving for retirement, as long as you get all the essential payments done first.
All right, Kahoot. Anyone still struggling to join? I'll give you another minute or so, maybe another 30 seconds.
I think we're good to go.
All right. How many months of fixed expenses should you account for in your emergency fund? All right, seems like most of you got this. The answer was 3 to 6 months. Cameron is in the lead. Which of the following is not a budgeting resource? Yeah, the answer was Doe. Digit.co, as I mentioned this in the presentation, it will automatically take money out of your paycheck and save it for you. Cam and Leonce.
Let's go.
Which is not an example of a regular income? Yeah, so it seems like most of you got this again. Co-op would be is a regular income. Birthday money from grandma is not the correct answer. It's an example of irregular income. Leonce has taken the lead.
No.
What should your money go toward first after you get paid? Yeah, so rent would be the most important thing to pay off. This is a fixed expense. Savings is a good answer, but usually you want to pay off all your fixed expenses before you start putting money into savings. According to the golden rule, what % of post-tax income should be allocated toward fun? In the presentation, I called this discretionary spending. Yeah, so that's the 30% figure I mentioned. It seems like some of you chose the 20% and the 10%. So the 20% is how much you should be putting into your savings. And there was no 10% figure in that golden rule that I mentioned. 30% is the correct answer here. Jesse takes the lead. Which is not a type of income tax? Okay, you all got that one? Jesse is still in the lead. Bonus question, how do you book a personal finance appointment? That was very quick. Yeah, anythrive.youcanbookme.me. Leonce in third place. Alyssa in second. Congratulations, Jesse.
Woo.
And then runners up, Renee and Z. All right. So yeah, to book an appointment, you can come to, you can go to this link, anythrive.youcanbookme.me. And we have a few upcoming events. We have a personal finance boot camp on credit next Wednesday, personal finance boot camp, basic investing the next Wednesday after that, and then the personal finance boot camp, advanced investing in 3 weeks. And then we're also looking for any incubator projects. If anyone has those ideas, you can come contact us. And then just fill out a brief survey. I think the link was already given.